We're glad to welcome you to Tremonton City Council this evening. We're not exactly the same as we were on the agenda, but we're going to make most things happen. Okay? Nobody's been begging to be on the opening ceremony, so I had asked Mark to offer the word of prayer, and Kurt will lead us in the pledge. Mark?
Our Father in heaven, as we come before thee as a Tremonton City, the council and community members and staff members, we are grateful for the community that we live in. We're grateful for the friendships that we have, and we ask thee to have a blessing on us as we decide the matters of the city, that we can do so with open minds and that we can make the best decisions possible, that the council can, and they can hear from the community and know what way to lead and guide them. And we ask thee to bless those who are struggling or sick or afflicted, that they can feel better and feel peace. And we say these things in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen.
Please stand and read the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Any conflicts of interest that we're dealing with tonight that anybody needs to declare? Okay.
No.
Agenda. Any questions on the agenda?
I'll make a motion we approve the agenda as written.
Motion made by Lyle, seconded by Connie. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Minutes of March 3rd, 2020. Any questions on the minutes?
I make a motion that we approve the minutes.
I'll second.
Motion made by Lyle H., seconded by Rick. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Public comment time. This is the time for the public to address the city council, if you feel so inclined. We're looking for comments. Your opportunity's gone. Okay. We have 10-year service award for Stacy Dutry, who is not here. 10 years with Tremont City. We have a good crew that work hard to make Tremont a good place. We do. And she's one of them. And she's not full-time, she's part-time. Okay. Mr. Battis isn't here with the fire department for his annual report. So, public safety staffing plan variations from Tremont City Police and Fire Departments. Sean Warnke.
Am I pulling that? It's actually the other one.
Oh, that's right.
So I put together, based on our conversation at the last city council meeting, some variations for you guys to consider, and we can certainly present this when we redo the public hearing. But this is just to give you some different options to consider. As you know, we're in the middle of the budget season, and so we are working towards putting a draft budget together, which will be due in the first meeting in May, so about a month and a half from now. So we do need to start making some preliminary decisions, if we want to put a reasonable budget together. So with that in mind, okay. Okay, so I'll try to go through this fairly quickly, but just as an overview, these are some of the different positions, and for the most part, we're essentially using the minimum identified hourly wage within a salary survey that we have done. And so just just be aware that that's where some of these numbers are coming from as we start talking about the aggregate. And here's just a snapshot, and you've seen this slide before of the min and max and the midpoint. This was based upon a salary survey of all fifth class, not all fifth class cities, but fifth class cities that we had data available. So here's one scenario, and I think I did 4, and hopefully you'll be able to keep track of them. I essentially used the same information and then used a strike-through format so you could see hopefully the differences between some of these proposals. But this proposal is essentially what you saw at the last city council meeting, which, so I won't spend a lot of time there, but I'll get to the bottom line, which is essentially we need to increase about 1.1 million, and that represents a 73% tax increase if we were, raising that revenue through property tax, which I think is unfortunately the best match, for several different reasons that we talked about last city council meeting. So I won't go into that unless there's a question. Here's another variation of that. It's essentially 24/7 full-time fire and EMS. So essentially on this scenario, we just stripped out the police. And you can see that in this slide here. And the police were, I think it was about 145,000. So we're still talking 1.1. And there are cheaper options. Again, that would represent about a 64% increase. So 24/7 full-time EMS, no part-time firefighters or police officers. So it's essentially just 24/7 EMS, the chief, the captain, and the EMT personnel. And again, there's still large numbers. $900,000 essentially, which would represent a 52% tax increase. So this next option is the cheapest, which is a daytime weekday. So this is different than you've seen in the past, which essentially this would be hiring firefighters to cover essentially the daytime from 8 to 5 or 8 to 4, something like that, 8-hour shifts during the weekdays. And it would include 1 new police officer. And so I was going to show you this slide. You saw it in the previous one, but you can kind of see that red line represents the bars that are within that daytime coverage range, and you can see they're towards the highest amount. So what you get there is you get a full-time fire chief and emergency manager. We don't currently have an emergency manager. We did, and it's a position that we haven't filled yet. And so, that position would be covered by the fire chief. At least that's envisioned here. There would be personnel at the fire station to provide first response during the daytime and weekdays. You get the 1 new officer to bring the city up to the appropriate staffing of officer per population and county standards. And in this scenario, we wouldn't essentially offer any additional funds for police officers to become EMT certified. You might remember that was another variation. So under this scenario, you can see the difference, but essentially comes to about $332,000 for the fire piece of it. And then you have 1 officer at essentially $90,000. These are wages and benefits. And for the grand total of $422,000. So that's the total expense. Now there is a little bit of cost savings, and these were shown on all the other variations, but I didn't spend much time on them because they were essentially between that 1.2 and $900,000 category. But you have emergency manager wages of that $19,000. I'm anticipating about a 30% reduction in ambulance wages, which is about the 40,000 that you would see. So about 60,000 can be subtracted from the total expense because there's some budget savings that would be considered to be realized under this proposal. So 362,000, to generate that that money through property tax would represent a 23% increase. So if you were going to a phase, I think that the one that we just talked about, the daytime and weekday full-time fire EMS, one new officer, is a good first step. The second step would essentially be moving to full-time fire and EMS 24/7. In all of these scenarios, we need our existing staffing, to essentially come when there's a second unit that's needed on a call, when we have calls simultaneously. And for all those reasons, they're still a very important part, and especially as we, transition. But, that would essentially be for phase one, about 362,000. And these are rough numbers, I'd still put them in the budget document, and they might change slightly, but roughly 362, and then the next second phase, 605,000, and then like phase three would be adding the part-time, where we'd essentially have, when you add the part-time, you have a little bit of flexibility to essentially break up those full-time employees that are at the station to take additional calls or multiple calls at the same time, as I understand it. And it's not the ideal scenario, but there's some possibilities there as I understand the staffing. So, anyways, that's what I just put together to give you an overview.
I was thinking about this week. What if we were to hire a fire chief, bring him on board? Your fire chief would have a lot of input over this plan, how he'd want to lay he or she would want to lay things out, and that would really be, to me, would be the first step to this whole process, rather than laying everything out before they get here, because they may have some different views on that strategy. And so I got thinking, I don't know if we can absorb a fire chief into our budget or not without the tax increment, but if we could get him in here and get that started, then we may be able to come up with some great plans at that person's lead, kind of like what Chief Verteg has done for the police department.
Mm-hmm. That's a good idea. I think we could on the short term, just because we're towards the end of the budget, so this current year's budget wouldn't be impacted significantly, and it would take a little time to actually go through the recruitment process. And this is where having a conversation with the firefighters, how long can they continue, providing coverage? Because if there's a little bit more time that they could give us, as far as taking calls during the day, then it would be great to, allow them to participate in the process, the hiring process.
But couldn't that chief facilitate that process? The new chief, you see what I mean?
Yeah.
And that was the thing I was trying to get at.
So I'm going to be the devil's advocate with that idea. We have a police or a fire department chief. Does he not get paid extra for being in that position or not? I don't know.
He gets a lump sum amount. All the officers do. I can't remember what his is specifically, but it's 4,000
a year.
So pay that person more to take more of a role than what we're currently paying them, so that there's more ownership in what's going on maybe. And I'm not saying that Steve doesn't do this already. But give him more pay to do more and try to start making this thing work. And one more idea to insert this thing, after talking with a couple of the younger fire workers, that they I think there's some good ideas out there, and they believe that maybe we haven't recruited volunteers the way they think that we ought to. And I got thinking about that. I mean, we're sitting here talking about these types of monies that we're willing to pay out. Why not pay incentives to these guys if they bring on a volunteer? And if the volunteer's there for the first year, they get, the referrer gets $1,000. If they're for 2 years, they get $2,000 at the end of the second year, $3,000 at the end of the third year. It's going to be a lot cheaper than committing to these type of expenses on an ongoing year basis, and see if we can beef up our volunteers naturally instead of just giving up on the fact that they're not gonna volunteer. And maybe we'll find out they aren't gonna volunteer, but at least with an incentive, we'll know if we can't do it or not.
As I've talked around a little bit as well, that's sort of the comments that I've been, let's try this incentive idea maybe first, and then see if we can't get something going there. As I've talked to other people in the community.
It's a good idea.
So if you were to do this on an incremental basis, cover the, a couple of guys during the heavy part of the day, keep going with our volunteer force while we're trying to increase our volunteer force, without paying $168,000 to a brand new fire chief, just kind of work better with what we've got. That's my opinion.
It's a start.
I think having the conversation with the fire department, we went through the process, and from time to time I hear that they have hard time covering calls. So I don't know how much time there is to sort of work this out. But if we could, if there's time to try some of these other approaches, I think that'd be great.
It's a start.
I'd love to see it solved internally and see if there's ways that we could essentially keep our existing system. Everything that I've heard, from the fire, not everyone, but, talking to the fire department employees, survey included, listening to some of the standards and thresholds, based on kind of industry standards, and then just seeing what's kind of going around with some of these other communities. It's kind of evolving. But I think having them come in at the next meeting, we can run through this presentation again, and I think having those kind of conversations with them and see if those are some solutions.
That's a good idea.
would be
I really
wonderful.
like that too. Gives them some buy-in, invites them to get out in the community and kind of reach out to people that they think might be a good fit for that. It's not everybody's gig, but it allows people, it allows those that are already currently serving to look around at people who fit what we're wanting, and I think it's a great idea.
We
What do you
have
guys
to
think
ramp
out here?
up, just one other point as it relates to that, we have, you might recall from that first presentation, we talked about how we have an aging employee force.
Yes.
And so a lot of the individuals that were making, high volumes of calls are starting to sort of get towards the end of their career. And so, we're having little problems now, with the pool that we have, and we're gonna need to actually replace some of those individuals who provided a lot of service and over the years and continue to do that, but
I like Lyle's idea. I really did see it, give them a chance to draw some new people in with an incentive kind of thing. That's a good idea. Work towards that and see if it works. If it doesn't, we gotta move forward on something else. So that's at least a step to go into right now. And then we need to really have the fire department guys here when it's legal to do it. And have a conversation with them and get their honest to goodness input. Okay? Not the old guys, not the young guys, but the group as itself. Can you handle this kind of stuff or can you not handle it, kind of? That's what I really like Lyle's idea. What do you guys think?
Incentivize
Sounds like a
it.
good start. I was just gonna say, you don't agree with Lyle too much. Other than that.
It's good you're wearing that green necklace.
You good with that? Okay.
I am.
All right, let's move in that direction, should we, Sean?
Yeah, so we'll try to schedule them to come as soon as we can.
Okay, sounds like a deal. In accordance with Tremonton City revised ordinances 8-1056, discussion and consideration of City Council's classification of parcel number 050540118, which is 4.65 acres in size and is located at 945 North, 200 West in Tremonton, Utah, as significant.
2000 west.
What did I say? 2000 West in Tremonton, Utah, as significant real property for the purposes of determining the necessity of a public hearing before considering the disposal of surplus property. So do we have just move into the public hearing now?
So there's three steps.
Okay, tell me.
This first step, and it's a little unusual, but it comes at the advice of our city attorney based on the way that our ordinances are written. Essentially, there's classification in our ordinance about significant and insignificant property. And it requires the DRC to review it and make a recommendation, and the city council to do the same. The DRC classified as significant property because it is developable property and it was held for a public purpose, which is the fire station. And so because of that recommendation, we went ahead and advertised it as a public hearing so we could do multiple steps in the same meeting. But it still is advisable that you guys make that same determination or not. I guess you could classify as insignificant, but the recommendation is just to make a motion to classify the 4.65 acres as significant property. And then you can move to the next
And the
step,
public
which is
hearing.
to conduct a public hearing.
Okay,
I'll make the motion that we do that.
do we have a motion to do that?
I'll second it.
Second by Connie. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, now we can go into a public hearing regarding the disposal of the surplus piece of property. Okay. Public hearing is now open. Do you have anything for us in this meeting, Sean?
I could just, Lindsay, if you would, I think everyone's familiar with this piece, but let me just, we did put it up, just so everyone knows what we're talking about. It's the parcel in red there that you can see on the left image. And then the parcel to the right is what Valley View Granite is proposing for improvements, which they've anticipated doing those improvements within 1 to 7 years, essentially, kind of a phase. But it includes a new warehouse, as I understand it. Is that right? Fabrication, I guess, expansion of. What? Do you mind stepping?
Yeah, you
Is that
betcha.
okay, Mr. Mayor?
Yes, please.
So,
Come up and introduce yourself first, please.
Blake Christensen, Valley View Granite. The proposal, as Sean started to indicate, is basically an expansion of the existing production facility with the warehousing of added goods and services that we would essentially offer with cabinetry and the ability to warehouse and stockpile prior to delivery, basically. The other thing that we're exploring, we found that there's a need and a use for our waste product to crush and use for landscape applications, and so we need the space to be able to do that. And it's more effective and efficient to store that on site, bring in a crushing machine once a year, and then crush and stockpile it and distribute it as crushed or a finished good at that point. So that's what is indicated in a little red bubble on the north side of the building, and then in the purple would be a tentative proposed throughput or a throughway to where delivery trucks would circle the property and exit, enter on the south side, deliver and exit on the north side, both delivery and our internal distribution trucks. So that's kind of the gist of the proposal at this point. The other proposal would be to add additional administrative offices. There is, if you look at the just to the northeast of the existing building, there's a little rectangle that kind of shows where we would extend the existing building for additional office space.
Is that where your offices are right now, is right by the little red square?
That's correct. Yep. Yeah, there's two. There's a downstairs and an upstairs right where that red marker is. And then the manufacturing facility is along that same building. And then the larger building is the warehousing material currently. So.
Any questions? Any more public comment, hearing? This is a,
Thank you.
thank you. Thank you. Okay. We don't need, public hearing is now closed. We've already talked about the public hearing plan. We don't need to talk about that more in this meeting, do we?
No.
Discussion and consideration of adopting resolution number 20-11, authorizing the disposal of surplus real property owned by Tremonton City, more specifically described in parcel number 05-054-0118, comprising approximately 4.65 acres, located at 945 North, 2000 West in Tremont, Utah. Council, any questions?
I'll make a motion that we adopt resolution number 20-11.
I'll second it.
Motion
Second
made,
that.
motion made by Lyle and seconded by Lyle and Brett. And roll call, please.
Rick, aye.
You guys have been a great partner in the community of Tremonton, and we appreciate all you do. Okay. Brett, aye.
Lyle Vance, aye.
Lyle H. I.
Oh yeah, Lyle Vance, aye. I agree. We're glad you're here.
I agree, I have it in my home.
Okay, motion passes. Thank you. You did.
I didn't say anything.
Well, say something. What are you
It's not
going to
yours,
do?
fault, I said something nice.
Oh, okay. Did you vote?
Yes, I did.
Okay. Motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next weekend.
Discussion and consideration of adopting ordinance 20-03, amending the Tremonton City Land Use Code, Title III, General Public Works Construction Standards and Specifications, Standard Drawings, Appendix A.
Now, the Tremonton Planning Commission went through this quite in detail.
Okay.
And they also brought Paul back and had a discussion with him last week, and so it was really regurgitated quite a bit, and they unanimously voted to move that forward to us.
So, did somebody have a presentation on this?
I did, and I could answer questions if there's any
Do
questions.
we have any questions, council?
Can you tell us in a nutshell?
A lot of it is, we've come up with some new road sections based on like our BR Mountain Road that's an 80-foot width. And so we've redefined what those lanes of travel were, how they fit into certain areas with on-street parking, no on-street parking. That's been generalized and all put into maps within those standards. There's two standard changes as far as construction. One is there's a new saddle that's going to be required on the water and the secondary, and that's a stainless steel saddle. We've been using what's called it's a Romac, which is a brand, which is a nylon coated ductile iron, and we've had some of those start failing over the years. If the nylon coating gets nicked, they rot and deteriorate, and so with this all stainless steel, the hope is that we don't have, stainless steel holds up pretty good, and it's kind of a cast stainless steel. So that's one change, and then another change is with the grading in the curb and gutter section for the storm drain, we're going to a hooded drain, which means you see these a lot back east, but we do have some around town where you have an opening in the back of the curb where the water runs down the curb into the hole and into the grate at the same time. These are becoming more of the normal standard and easier to get. Plus, they pick up the water better. In some steeper sloped areas, you'll actually have the water sheet flow before it goes into the storm drain. But that's the two changes on the standard itself. The rest is just kind of housekeeping. Yeah.
Okay, Lyle.
What are the cost differences? Do you anticipate any
Well,
Cost.
probably on that saddle, because we've already gone to it in our public works. There's about a $10 difference on that saddle. And then probably with that hooded drain, because it is a hooded drain, the box is actually a little shorter. Instead of being 4 foot, they're 3 foot. So you're probably looking at $100 per box, somewhere in there, because it's just the grade on top difference type of thing.
Okay,
And so
thank you.
it's poured into the curb. And on your standard street section, you might have one of those every intersection, depends on if you have waterways and that. So you're probably looking at per street, probably about $300-400 per street different cost with your boxes in there.
Okay, thanks.
Any questions, council?
I'll go ahead and do like catch up to where we're at here. Sorry,
11B.
just took me a minute to get back to it. I'll make a motion that we adopt ordinance number 20-03 and amend the Tremonton City Land Use Code.
Motion made by Lyle
I'll
H.
second it.
Second by Connie. Roll call.
Rick, aye.
Brett, aye.
Lyle Vance, aye.
Lyle H.I.
Connie Archibald, aye.
Okay, thank you. Discussion and consideration of adopting resolution 20-12 approving a land acquisition agreement between Tremont City, Intermountain Farmers Association, Arizona Machinery Company, and Contemporary Homes LLC for Tremont City's purchasing of the land for future development of 1650 West Collector Road. Sean?
Yeah, Lindsay, can you pull up that PowerPoint? So we have been working on an acquisition agreement. The city essentially submitted an application to the Box Elder County Corridor Preservation Fund, and it's for a right-of-way that we don't feel that we can exact through the development process. Essentially, Lot 1 there is owned by IFA, and their intent is to develop a store there, but they have access from Main Street, and so they don't necessarily need to construct the road as part of the development. And so for that reason, the city has identified this as an area or as a project and a right-of-way that we need to acquire. It's a collector road, so it'll be essentially a 66-foot road, which lines up with, this is in the vicinity of Stock's Equipment, Butter's Tractors across the street, that's 1650, and then the interstate is on the west side there. But this road will eventually tie and be the main collector road that will service this quadrant of the city, will tie back into Iowa Stream. So there's 3 different parties that we've been working with in order to acquire the property. One is IFA, which is the owner of Lot 1. Lot 2, which is the parcel on the left-hand side there, is owned by Stock's Equipment, and then Contemporary Homes owns the property in the rear. And so in order for everyone to have their needs met, as we took right-of-way through parcel 1 and 2, those individual property owners were looking to replace it with additional acreage from Contemporary Homes. And we were able to come up with an agreement that everyone has agreed to in principle, and which is on your agenda. And essentially what's the transaction will be is that Tremont City will be purchasing parcel number 5, which is that mustard color parcel from IFA. We'll purchase parcel, and 4, which is the salmon color parcel from Stock's Equipment. We'll also be purchasing 75% of parcel number 6, which is essentially a remainder parcel that is created by the city essentially creating that remainder parcel that currently right now is owned by IFA. So essentially the appraiser identified that 75% of the value was lost by virtue of it being a remnant parcel that had very little square footage, with the only real property owner being Stock's Equipment. So Stock's Equipment is paying the remaining 25%. So parcel 5 is that $104,000 appraised at $300 a square foot. And same with parcel 6, with us paying $14,000. And when I say us, we do have quarter preservation funds that will pay those costs.
Have we applied for that money yet?
We did.
We did?
So this was the project. And parcel 3 is owned by Contemporary Homes. They will dedicate that to the city. And same with parcel 9. Parcel 7, the way that the engineering worked in creating the radius around, there was essentially less than a square foot that we needed to acquire from, excuse me, Stott's Equipment, which equaled that $2.04. So the grant will also pay for professional fees, which is noted currently at $35,000. It took a lot of surveying and engineering to get to a point where we could essentially demonstrate that everyone's, needs would be met.
Are we buying parcel 6?
We're buying 75% of it.
Which-
75%. And why do we need to do that? I guess I can't see it in the pen, but
Those were
maybe I
essentially
just don't see it.
Those were essentially the damages assigned to that by the appraiser, because we're creating a parcel that has little value except to Stott's Equipment. It's essentially a small piece that's undevelopable, and this.
Okay, all right.
So here's essentially the layout, and there's been several iterations that we've gone through, but essentially accomplishes IFA's needs. There's 2 out pads, or 2 pads that would be out front there. Stott's Equipment needs are met as well, and Contemporary Homes, I think, sees value in essentially receiving access to their property. They do have access from Iowa Stream, but it's as that property continues to be developed, this access will certainly be of value to them. So that's what it looks like when it's platted. The right-of-way there's a temporary turnaround according to our city standards. So this is similar to what we had to do with BR Mountain Road, where essentially we would construct that road, since we can't exact it from any one individual. It's not we don't have transportation impact fees currently, as you know, and even if we did, it's a collector road, so it's thought of as a project improvement rather than a system-wide improvement. So the breakout of what's being estimated currently is about $472,000 for the street portion, streets and sidewalk. Storm drain would be $120,000, and culinary $114,000, and secondary water, so $731,000. The developers would dedicate the public utility easements, which are noted on the plat, and they would also be responsible for the dry utilities, and would have a 5-year window from when we purchase the property. There are several different other road projects that we're trying to balance. As you know, 1000 North is a project that is actually being designed right now, and we're actively trying to figure out how to fund that in addition to this project. And there's been some discussions with the development of an annexation of Cocopelli LLC's property. It's 950 East, that we may participate there, but that's left to be determined. Although we've made that statement and some of those representations in a preliminary annexation agreement that was never finalized.
Is Cocopelli bringing another partner to the deal?
They are. So there are a lot of projects to consider. 5 years was about as much time as. I'd love to have more time, but I think it starts to become unreasonable for those individuals and parties to wait, for that road to be constructed. And IFA is trying to match up, their construction of their project, with the construction of that road. So, anyways, that's what it is. There's the engineer's estimate.
Sean,
Council questions?
back to IFA, those two buildings out in front to the north of it, is that their buildings, is that their land?
It is.
So they would sell those plots to somebody else, is what the idea is?
The developed paths.
So that lot 6 that we own 75% of, potentially we can sell that to get some of our investment back?
Well, the county quarter preservation fund's paying for it, so the 75% is essentially our damages. And then Stocks Equipment is paying the 25% to essentially acquire that parcel of property. There is a clause in there that if we need additional easements for, street lights or for moving the transformer, because there is currently a power pole and guy wire right in the area right there, that they would essentially provide that, make that land available for those easements without any additional costs.
So with everything coming into it and going out, how much is this costing Tremonton City?
$730,000.
Over the next 5 years.
Yeah, that's the, I'm going the wrong way. That's what's estimated with those utility funds paying for the utility improvements. So currently, right now, in our streets fund, we do have $500,000 in Fund 42, but as I mentioned, there's multiple projects that we're trying to, that we're obligated in some way to work towards improving, and some of them will be phased or partnered in partnership. So we do need to continue to, as we have fund balance, continue to move money into that Fund 42.
They'll pay for this over the 5-year period. So when does this happen again?
So they're anxious to close. This has been going on for some time, working with 3 parties and trying to figure out, how we can meet everyone's needs. So Stotts Equipment's would really like to close on the property. They're working towards doing an expansion, as I understand it. So within the next few months is what I hope. That's why I put it on this agenda, so we could actually move forward with to the title company and have them start preparing documents, and I could submit for reimbursement from the county. And then from the date of closing is when we would have 5 years to have the road constructed. So it really will service that whole quadrant of the city. Without it, I think circulation within that area is going to be compromised. And I do think it'll start to ramp up development that will occur in that area. I was going to say I did reach out to the, I'm just going to show it very well. I thought there was one more piece that didn't make it into the slideshow, but essentially the Farmland Reserve, which is a branch of the LDS Church, owns property behind Contemporary Homes, so I reached out to them. We need to acquire a regional storm drain basin there in addition to, to the road. There is an outlet that goes underneath the interstate right in that general vicinity, right on the property line, more or less. And so, the idea is that we'd have a linear storm drain pond. And talking to the church, they moved this to one of their committees to discuss, and there is a committee that, evaluates the development potential of properties, and as the development potential increases, then they move it from essentially the Farmland Reserve to the other corporation that does development. And so, so they are kind of interested to see how this all develops, and their long-term goal, as I understand it, preliminary talking to the representative that I did, was it would be developed as houses. And so I, I sent them a memo of a potential arrangement that, they would essentially deed us the land currently, so we have the regional storm drain pond. We'd give them impact fee credits and maybe consideration for rezoning of their property, because right now it's zoned at half-acre lots. And I think there's, greater development potential with a collector road that would be running through their property. So I'll keep you posted on that conversation.
council?
I'll make a motion that we approve this evening resolution number 20-12.
Motion made by Connie,
I'll second it.
second by Lyle Vance. Roll call.
Rick, aye. Brett, aye.
Lyle
Lyle
Vance.
H. I.
Lyle Vance, aye.
Connie Archibald, aye.
Okay, thank you. Okay, any calendar items that we need to talk about, Sean?
Just, we hinted, or I guess we stated, that the Utah League of Cities and Towns Conference is canceled, so we have canceled rooms.
Okay. City manager reports, Sean?
Actually, I do have some. Oh, thanks. So, unfortunately, Steve Battis isn't here, but he has reached out to all the surrounding property owners, as I understand it, and has talked to them about burning those homes down. And there is a restaurant in Tremonton Center that did express a little concern. Chief Battis, I believe, has addressed their concerns, but he was planning on being here to tell you more specifically.
So, did we burn down the Summers home? Was that burned down, or was that just demolished?
I was burned.
I just get concerned about the smoke. If we can be a clean burn, then I'm okay with it, but I don't want, we got all those new businesses. I just don't want to be filling their buildings with smoke.
I'm with you.
Is it a big difference between just demolishing or burning and then demolishing? Is there a big difference in price?
I don't know. We could get that price. These are masonry structures, I believe, so I think Steve does feel like it'll burn, differently, almost like a chimney that goes up, and, they would try to do it in a day that, there was a plan pushing it one way.
I just think if there's not much difference in price, I would just as soon see us demolish them versus burning them and running that risk of smoking up the businesses in that area.
When do they plan on doing it?
Well, I think the gas lines are still connected, is what Steve was telling me, so I think they're still a few weeks out. So,
Can we get a cost on, like Brett said,
Didn't he-
demolition without burning and burning, the difference between the two of them?
Didn't Battis talk about that when he was here last
Yeah, I
time?
can get hold of Blaine.
okay.
I don't know if he knew the cost difference.
He was gonna do them anyway.
We didn't think there was gonna be a smoke problem out by Little Mountain.
Yeah,
Oh, really?
Okay, so we'll,
that's always going to be a reservation.
so, the other item that I had on the agenda was, city services and the COVID-19. And originally, when I put it on the agenda, it was essentially working towards the governor's, recommendation, which is since, changed, or other entities have stepped in and made additional standards. So, I read a press release and I forwarded it to you. Boyd, he's director of the health department, saying, that we shouldn't have gatherings more than 10 people. Governor Herbert's, which is done on March 12th, had different standards as well. And then President Trump has, I think it's 10 people too, I've heard.
So I just read the governor put another one out at 5 o'clock, and all dine-in restaurants are to be closed, only drive-through in the state.
In the state?
And he also said that less than 10 gatherings of 10.
Okay. So in response to that, some of our surrounding communities, Garland's closed their library, Brigham City's closed their library, senior center, and museum. Now, when they close their senior center, they're still delivering meals and doing curbside pickup for meals. And so, anyways, we wanted to bring it to you. We've had conversations internally with the staff and also with the mayor. And the thought was is to have the discussion at council meeting. And
I think we should close the senior center, except for getting them meals. I agree with that.
I agree with that too.
What, so we have we think that the food pantry falls under that critical services.
Mhm.
So I think what we had actually some police presence there just to make sure that, it didn't get, anything
Right.
but peaceful as people picked up food, which there was no problem as I understand it. The library has expressed a desire to close, at least on a staff level. And I think, is it for a 2-week period? Is that the duration that?
April 1st.
Okay.
Yes.
Close until April 1st.
Is what the governor's saying?
I can deal with that.
Yeah. I say we follow suit.
Okay. So, okay, we'll just.
Not,
Okay.
not Public Works.
Public work.
You gotta work, Paul.
Okay, so then I'll just reach out to the staff and let them know the library and senior center to go to those closed. I think Kim was thinking about, even allowing exchanges for books. Brigham City just essentially shut theirs completely down, exempting any library fines and not even keeping the drop box open. So I don't know if you want us just to work on a staff level or if you have, work it out.
Yeah,
Okay.
I think.
Okay, we'll move forward with that.
Would it be beneficial?
Do we meet,
Yes, Lyle?
do we meet again? Yeah, do we meet again as city council then
We do.
in 2 weeks?
Well, and I guess that's a point. I mean, if we're gonna be doing this, do we have essential items that have to be discussed in 2 weeks?
As relates to the coronavirus.
City council.
Oh, well, it's actually a 5th Tuesday, so it would be actually April 7th, so it's closer to 3 weeks. Is that right?
So we'll bypass it? Okay.
Bypass.
Okay.
The
The
April 1st deadline. Okay,
Yeah.
perfect.
But we may need to reach out, or unless you want us just to,
But we can have a city council meeting with less than 10 people here. We can have the nitty gritty of this council here. And if there's something that we need to talk about, we can get together and talk
yeah,
about it.
yeah.
Question that I have for the council is, what's his name from the health department that I talked to?
Mike Weibel.
Weibel. Would you like a presentation from him, an audio, a conference call from him, so you could actually be totally up to speed as to what's going on?
I would.
Yeah, I think it'd be beneficial.
At some point in time?
Sure.
I will talk to him and see, and this would be in the evening sometime, probably on stake president's evening or sometime. No,
Okay.
well, if that's all right. Because he wanted to meet with the mayor's association meeting, but I think he would like to meet. He'd be willing to meet with the city council, or a conference call with the city council. If that's all right, I'll check with him tomorrow. Okay?
I know it's getting late and we had an early start, so we can just forego this presentation and save it for another time.
Okay. Sounds like a deal. Council reports? Connie, start on your end.
Thanks to Paul and Curtis for being prepped and Sean for our early discussions from 5 till now. Appreciate you guys.
Good.
No, I don't have anything.
Okay. Lyle, you got anything for us?
Just a little bit of a report. The tree board has been meeting with the idea of maybe doing some work over at the cemetery. We've met with Amy May from Tree Utah, and we have a company that is willing to purchase a bunch of trees for us. And what we're thinking is we might try to. We've got a source. We can get the trees ordered, and we can have them here. We hope to be able to have all of this put together by the time we have our celebration for Memorial Day in May. So we're working on that. I just wanted to let you know what we're doing.
Okay, thank you, Lyle. I don't think I have anything. We need a motion now. One more motion for this evening.
I make a motion we adjourn.
Motion made by Brett,
I'll second it.
seconded by Lyle Vance. All in favor?
Aye.
All right,
Okay, meeting's adjourned. Thank you, Lyle.
thank you.